5 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this Wednesday morning. If you go on the news right now, any time lately, you will see Syria in the news. This morning there was a story, from NBC News just 4 hours ago. The Syrian Kurdish town of Kobani is about to fall to ISIS militants. Some of the people over there in Syria are trying to find their way to safety by crossing the border into Turkey. It's nothing new. It's something that has been a shame or a disgrace on this planet and with humanity for a very, very long time. I will never understand why throughout history Jewish people have been treated the way they have been treated. It will never make sense to me at all. There is a town in Syria, also near the Turkish border, called Aleppo. I had never heard of Aleppo, and it's the absolute honest truth, but I learned a little bit about the people from Aleppo anyway, if not Aleppo itself, from the book we're going to talk about. It is one of those that you will find yourself learning from and relating to, because basically, if you're human, you love your family. And if you're human, you love your roots. And if you're human, but I'll just never understand this whole anti-Semitic thing. I'll never get it. Claudette Sutton is on the phone. She wrote the book, Farewell Aleppo, My Father, My People, and Their Long Journey Home. She has a list of credentials, but let's talk about her book, Farewell Aleppo, and say good morning to Claudette. I don't even know where she is, actually. Good morning, Claudette, again.
Good morning. I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Oh, are you? Okay, well, thank you.
Part of the world right now.
Is that where you grew up? Did you grow up there?
No, I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., but I moved here about a little less than 30 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This story... Is it as foreign to you as it is to us? Or did you hear this story when you were a child?
In a way it is foreign to me too, because when I was growing up, I grew up in a household with two parents. Both my parents are Jewish from Syria, so I knew that was our background, but Syria was not a part of our daily conversation, and the history and the life that my father had in Syria was not something that he really talked about. He had left Syria as a young man, as I described in Farewell Aleppo. The book is about his journey out of Syria, and he came to America. So we had this Syrian past, and the Syria connection was part of our way of observing holidays and the foods that we ate. It was a somewhat different Jewish tradition in this country from the Jews that came here from Europe. But the history that he told me about and that I researched, I really didn't know until I dug in and started learning about it. And as you described, as you were opening the conversation, you said it's nothing new. It isn't, and yet the amazing thing that I learned is that when my dad was growing up in Syria in the early part of the 20th century, he was still able to go to school with Jews and Christians and Muslims in the same school. It was in that sense a very different time there.
Yeah, that is the strange thing. I mean, why is it that we have this circumstance that resembles what we know in America as, okay, we all get along. It doesn't, your differences in religion don't affect me in any way. I mean, it's just we have differences. I mean, but yet the world changes and then it becomes the same as it was. We've had throughout history the attempt to commit genocide upon the Jewish people.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, what's going on there now is genocide among the Muslim groups. It's an extremist time that's hard to understand.
Sure is.
And so, part of what I want to talk about in the book, what I want people to learn, is there's history there that's a little different than what we might know. I mean, the Jewish history in Aleppo, Syria, that town in the north city. It's a big city in the northwest corner of Syria, had a Jewish community for 2,000 years. It was a center of Jewish scholarship for hundreds of years, and it had a Muslim majority for many centuries, but a Jewish and Syrian community that were able to live with one another with a respectful tolerance that certainly isn't what we're seeing in that part of the world right now. And how that's changed so quickly, I certainly can't understand, but I do want people to just have that in mind, that it's not ancient history. It's less than 100 years ago. It can be in our sense of what's possible and what we can hold out hope for and even work towards.
Wow.
And do you think that's from the outsiders? Do you think outsiders are the catalyst? Because sometimes communities are thriving and then they all get along, then somebody from the outside comes in and they stir things up and keep it stirred up.
I think there's a certain amount of that. I think, I really believe those things that say, hatred is something that's learned. It's not something it can seem as natural as anything in the world when we're the one feeling it in the middle of it. But from the outside, it looks cultivated. It looks artificial. It looks like it was taught somehow. And, my dad's time of growing up in Syria was at the end of this long, many centuries long period that I'm describing of this coexistence. I think a lot of factors stirred that up, and yes, I think a lot of them were cultivated from the outside. We're not organic to the people that were feeling it.
The thing that I'm reminded of a little bit is, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Life is Beautiful. It's an Italian movie, but yeah, and in that movie, the father has to pretty much come to grips with the fact that everything is changing, and not to be a spoiler, but he dies, and that movie's been around a while, so hopefully I didn't spoil it for too many people. But I wanted to ask you something, Claudette.
Sure.
Before you tell us about your dad's journey, what was the journey for you? And I use the word journey in quotes, I guess, in regard to getting to this point where the journey you took to tell us about his journey.
Yeah, it was an interesting journey for me because it started with a real simple request from my dad, who's a lovely, soft-spoken guy, very confident, but also in a modest kind of soft-spoken way. He just asked me if I would help him put his story on paper. I think he wanted a way to just share his experiences growing up in Syria and coming to America with friends of his who had been asking about it. So I sat down with him with a little cassette recorder and a notepad and a bunch of questions and started asking him questions. And I just felt like someone had opened the door to the family vault. It was just, I describe in the book that sometimes people have family members who tell the same stories over and over again, and they're not that interesting, and you're tired of them. For me, it was the total opposite. It was, how have you not told us?
Yeah,
this is so fascinating.
Yeah.
And then talking with him led to doing more research on my own, and then I found out a lot of things that he hadn't told me about and that I'm not sure he really knew that much about himself, about Syria's Jewish history. It was, I think as with many of us, we live somewhere and we know our immediate experiences. We might not know the far back history of where we're living, and plus I think just the fact that having left Syria under duress to escape anti-Semitism, they weren't feeling particularly nostalgic towards Syria. So I was fascinated to learn about all that Jewish history of Syria that, as I mentioned, goes back to the Roman times. So that process of writing my dad's story expanded into writing a book that I wanted other people to share.
And now you couldn't go
realizing
back. Even now, I
couldn't go back to Syria. Yeah.
No way. I couldn't either.
Yeah.
As a Christian, I couldn't go either. I would be I'd be the next journalist or something with a knife to my neck.
Think about exactly. And we tried to go back a few years ago, but even then, it was just before this war started, and then of course that nipped our plans in the bud, and now I can't see that happening.
Your dad must have been so terribly sad to really leave that place that his whole family grew up in.
That's a really interesting question. I think he really wasn't. I think he left with a sense of, at least the way he describes it, and I wonder, is this the way memory can change our sense of what we felt at the time? But I think that what he describes, at any rate, is this sense of going off on an adventure, being a young man whose father told him, that he was going across the world for business to work for an uncle as a way to find a way to get from Shanghai to the United States. I'm sorry, to get from Syria to the United States, because he was sent to Shanghai with hopes that he could get from Syria to Shanghai and then maybe find a way to get from Shanghai to the United States. And he said they had seen young men go away and come back with money and fortune and stories to tell, and I think that's what they thought maybe they were doing.
No, really?
I didn't realize at the time that was the last time he was going to see Syria.
You know, and I can sort of understand that as a young person wanting to get away, but I'm guessing later on is when the memories were coming back and something that maybe was more nostalgic than immediately. What was your dad's name?
Mike Sutton. He's still alive.
Oh, he is. Oh, okay. I'm sorry to refer to him in the past.
That's okay, yeah.
Okay, so are you an only child?
No, I have a brother and a sister as well.
Okay, but because you're a journalist, you've got the talent, I guess, and that's what he recognized, to come to you to put the story together.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just honored that he asked, and I said sure, and we took off and had some conversations that led to many, many more.
Well, we have only scratched the surface, and we need to take a little break. Claudette Sutton is on the phone. She has written this book. It's an outstanding tribute to her dad and an education for us, and a reminder that the world isn't exactly right yet. And obviously, there's no question about that. Farewell Aleppo is the title of the story. My father, my people, and their long journey home. We'll take a little break, and we'll be right back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. For today, a mix of sun and clouds and very warm this afternoon, high 86 to 90. Tonight will be mainly clear with a low of 64 and a few inland spots, about 71 though along the coast. Tomorrow, partly sunny and very warm, high 86 to 90. On Friday, mostly sunny, high again 86 to 90. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
Hey folks, the key word this week at Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens is truckload. The trucks are arriving with absolutely super savings on just what you want for fall. We almost sold out of those wonderful dwarf, red ruffle, ever-blooming azaleas, but now a great stock has arrived. Get 6 of these fantastic beauties for just $24.99. How about this super deal on boxwood? Not $6.99, not $5.99, not $4.99, just $2.99 for boxwoods. All citrus trees are priced to go at 20% off. And of course, the truckload sale on shade trees. It gets better every week. Get an extra large shade tree. Choose from dozens of varieties up to 6 feet tall, just $49.99. Bob's open daily till 4, Saturdays till 2. Bob Wine's Camellia Gardens, Southeast 38th Street, Ocala, growing greener with Ocala since 1952.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hi, this is Becky at Hello Gorgeous Salon. We are located in the heart of downtown Ocala, right next to the historic Marion Theater. I'd like to invite you to stop by and see our new boutique area and meet our staff of professional stylists. Here at Hello Gorgeous, we are ready to update your look with the latest trends. It's the perfect time to brighten up your look, so make your appointment now for those highlights and Brazilian blowout. But don't stop there. We are a full-service salon offering manicures, pedicures, and facials also. So if you've been searching for a salon to call your own, come and see us at Hello Gorgeous Salon. We are located at 48 South Magnolia Avenue in downtown Ocala, right next to the Marion Theater. So call today and set up your appointment at Hello Gorgeous Salon at 351-5358. That's 351-5358. And don't forget, we also do men and children's cuts too. 351-5358.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hi, my name is Dr. Erica Olstein with A Better You Healthcare Acupuncture and Eastern Medicine. Join me Friday, October 10th at 11 a.m. when we do a live acupuncture session right here in the studios of WOCA. Acupuncture is used to treat everything from back pain and migraines to high blood pressure and allergies. We treat the source of your problems, not just your symptoms. For more information, go to abetteryouhealthcare.com. Tune in and call in with your questions Friday, October 10th at 11 a.m. right here on The Source.
This is James Snyder inviting you to join me each Sunday morning at 9:30 for Sunday Joy, right here on WOCA 1370.
WOCA.
All right, 20 minutes after 11 o'clock. Wow, only 10 minutes. This is such a great conversation. So 10 minutes is a little disappointing, isn't it? Claudette Sutton is on the phone in, did she say New Mexico, Rob? New Mexico, right?
Santa Fe.
Oh, Santa Fe. Okay. Farewell, Aleppo is the title of her book. My father, my people, and their long journey home. And if you don't know where Aleppo is, you're in good company because I didn't either. It's in northern or northwestern Syria, right near the Turkish border, which is, of course, where the hot stuff is happening right now with those ISIS nuts. Claudette, thank you for waiting through the break. So take us back in time. What year did your dad leave Syria?
Okay, so my dad had been living, they were raised in this Orthodox Jewish community in Aleppo, and his father, more than my dad himself, his father could see the writing on the wall that the anti-Semitism was getting untenable and they should find a way to get out. So in January of 1941, he sent my father and his brother, his next younger brother, these were the two oldest sons, from Syria to Shanghai, China, with hopes that somehow they could use Shanghai as a stepping stone to the United States. Because his father's plan was to get them to the United States, where there was already a good Syrian Jewish community, but the United States wasn't issuing visas for families with young kids or these young men that were just still in college. So he figured this was some kind of opportunity. He didn't know quite how it would work out, but he sent them to Shanghai. It was January of 1941. And then, of course, in December of 1941, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And the day after that, the morning of December 8th, the Japanese troops marched into Shanghai and occupied Shanghai. So my dad actually ended up living in Shanghai through Japanese occupation during World War II.
Wow. He went from what do they call it, the frying pan to the pot?
Yeah.
What do they call it? Yeah. Yeah, the frying pan to the fire, sort of.
But then his brother had to go back, though, you had said.
I'm sorry, I lost you a second there.
His brother had to return, though, because he was ill.
Yes. His brother had to go back to Syria. He got sick with tuberculosis and had to go back. And his uncle left, that he went to work for in Shanghai, left for the United States on what turned out to be the last ship to go from Shanghai to the United States until the war broke out, and then, of course, until the end of World War II, because there were no passenger ships going back and forth during the war. So my dad actually ended up being alone in Shanghai. And it was fascinating for him, I think, because, he'd been the oldest son in this big family with a lot of kids, and the responsibility on him was very much a communal family responsibility to represent the family well, to be the model for the younger children. As his mother put it, if the head of the fish smells bad, the whole fish is rotten. So that was my dad's injunction to shape up and set a good example. Yeah. And then suddenly he's on his own and having to fend for himself. But the amazing thing that he said to me about that a couple of times was he said, when you're thrust into something by yourself, that's when you have to rely on your own resources. That's when your resources become the surviving factor, as he put it. So I think for him, in a way, it was a chance to see what he really had inside to rely on himself.
So did he always have it in his mind that he was going to end up in America, or was there a portion of time where he thought, well, this will be my new place, Shanghai?
I think he thought the plan would be ultimately to get to America, because I think he realized for the rest of the family, Shanghai wasn't going to be a place where they could come and settle. But, it did turn out to be, it kind of was going from the frying pan into the fire, but in another way it was a haven that nobody could have predicted. Shanghai at the time was an open port, a free port in the world where anybody could be admitted if they could get there.
Well,
if you could get there, you'd be let in.
I'm going to say something. You tell me if I'm absolutely wrong or not. At least there was no anti-Semitism in Shanghai. Is that correct?
For the most part, that is correct. But the Japanese, of course, were involved with the Germans during the war, and the Germans were putting tremendous pressure on the Japanese to turn over the Jews in their occupation area.
Oh, my
and the Japanese were resisting. But, as my dad said, you just lived with this tremendous uncertainty as to whether the Japanese would give in.
Because they're so smart, aren't they? They say, the way to make the world better is to get rid of these peaceful people, so that the only people living on the planet are these terribly evil people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'll never understand this. How does anybody even agree to go along with these nuts?
Yeah.
I mean, one man can't do it, but one man somehow convinces everybody else that he's right in many cases.
Oh, your dad was the catalyst for the rest of the family, too, to try to leave.
Yeah, my dad, one of my dad's brothers put it very, very poignantly. He said that the plan that his grandfather had was to export his sons. And I just get chills when I think about that, because I think, to just realize that was the asset that he had, that was the resource that he had, was his sons. And so the plan was to send them away and hope that they could get the rest of the family there. And I think of the sacrifice and courage in the parents to be able to do that.
Tell me about yourself, Claudette. Is this this isn't the first book for you, right? I mean, what?
It is the first book. I've been publishing a newspaper for families in Santa Fe, New Mexico for going on 20 years, called Tumbleweeds.
Okay.
And I write in it, and I've written for other publications, but this is my first book.
And you're getting some rave reviews from the book. Well, for the
Bernard Kalb called it a treasure of a book, which
I see
is an
that.
incredible honor for me, yes.
Yeah.
He's my old guard standard of, what journalists should be, so I'm really honored by that.
But you didn't really write this book as a journalist, though. I mean, you have all the emotion that is jam-packed in there. It's not facts and figures. You've got laughter and you've got crying times.
Thank you. Yeah, it is certainly, a daughter's portrait of her father. And, as Larry said at the beginning of the show, if you're human, you love your family, and that's certainly true in my case. I think it's true in all of our cases. We love our family. We know our background on some level, and we all have stories. And if we can get the chance to get into those stories and learn more about our family, we've got so much opportunity to understand ourselves better and understand other people better.
Claudette, I'm curious if your father is surprised that the rest of us are interested in this story.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like he went to you to preserve the story for the family's sake, but yet you've expanded it to this whole family called Planet Earth. And is he surprised that we're interested in this?
I think he is. I think we all are, in a way. My mother said it's a book for other people. You kind of think, oh, this is just life. This isn't that interesting. And then you realize, yes, it's very interesting. First of all, it's history so many of us don't know. And then, just about my father's specific experiences. And then, as I was saying, I think when we, in specific stories of somebody else, sometimes we resonate so much with our own, maybe very, very different experiences, but that are similar in the core, on the inside of the feelings involved. And so I think that's surprising all of us, that so many people are resonating with what's, after all, a fairly small subgroup of people in this country. The Jewish population is small in itself, and then the subgroup of Syrian Jews is very small.
Yeah, and just it's a kind of a superficial side note from me personally, because growing up in New York, having Jewish friends, and thinking I knew Jewish culture, I realized, no, I didn't know Jewish culture. I knew New York Jewish culture. That's all I knew. It was just that tiny little dot on the map. I have a copy of the book. I'd like to give it away. It's called Farewell Aleppo. Claudette, so call me if you want the copy I have, 622-WOCA. Claudette, how do we buy it? Do you have a website?
I have a website. You can go to farewellaleppo.com, which is actually my publisher's website, or you can go to my website, ClaudetteSutton.com. And, of course, you can also buy it at Amazon and other online outlets and order it at your local bookstore.
Thank you for being on the air with us. Let's pray that Syria is peaceful again soon, and that Jewish people are allowed to live wherever they want to live, rather than the craziness that goes on in this world. Claudette, thank you so much for being on the air with us today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll be right back.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. Same-sex wedding preps underway in several states, including Colorado.
Today I don't have to go to jail. Today I can marry the person I love and I commit